He was just a father. A man on a quiet Saturday morning, steering his SUV down the tree-lined streets of Eastbrook. The sun was bright, the world peaceful, the kind of morning that made you forget how unfair life could sometimes be. Judge Malcolm Hayes didn't look like a man of power right now. No robe, no courtroom. Just a dad in a navy suit jacket, his tie loosened, his kids in the back seat laughing over who got to control the radio. "Come on, Dad, play something good," his 10-year-old son Aiden complained. "What's wrong with a little jazz?" Malcolm teased, tapping the steering wheel. "Everything." Maya, his 7-year-old daughter, squealed from the back. "It's boring." Malcolm smiled. "When you're my age, you'll understand good music." For a moment, his world was simple. No debates. No legal motions. No heavy cases on civil rights or systemic bias. Just a man, a father, in love with the ordinary peace of a morning drive. But peace, in America, can change in an instant. Especially when your skin is the wrong color in the wrong neighborhood. The red and blue lights flared behind him like a sudden storm. A siren screamed through the quiet morning, and Malcolm's hands stiffened on the wheel. His heart dropped, not because he was guilty, but because he knew what this could become. He eased the car to the side of the road, taking slow breaths. His children looked up, confused. "Daddy?" Maya asked. "Why are the police stopping us?" Malcolm smiled faintly, hiding the ache in his chest. "Probably a mistake, baby. Just stay calm." He rolled down his window, resting both hands visibly on the steering wheel. Every move slow, practiced. A habit every black father teaches himself, and one day will have to teach his son. 2 officers approached. One, Officer Bradley, tall, built, with a face hardened by years of arrogance. The other, Officer Kent, younger, uneasy, still learning how to follow orders without losing himself. Bradley didn't say good morning. Didn't smile. Didn't explain. "License and registration," he barked. Malcolm complied. "Yes, officer. It's in my glove compartment. May I reach for it?" "Go ahead," Bradley said, tone clipped. Malcolm retrieved the papers, handed them over. "May I ask what seems to be the problem?" Bradley eyed him. "You match the description of a suspect in a stolen vehicle reported last night. Step out of the car." Malcolm's eyebrows lifted slightly. "I assure you, officer, this is my vehicle. My registration." Bradley's tone turned sharp. "I said step out." Aiden leaned forward. "Dad, what's happening?" "Nothing, son. Everything's fine." Malcolm stepped out. Measured. Hands up, palms open. It didn't matter that he spoke with dignity. It didn't matter that his suit was tailored or that his car was legally registered. To Bradley, he was just another face. Another color. Another target to control. "Turn around," Bradley ordered. Malcolm frowned. "Officer, please." "Now." Cold steel snapped around his wrists. The cuffs bit into his skin. His children's screams pierced the air. "Dad, what are you doing to him?" Maya cried. Bradley turned his head sharply. "Stay in the car." Malcolm closed his eyes. He wanted to shout, to explain, to protect. But he knew any sudden movement could cost him more than his pride. He stood silently, head high, as if he were still behind the bench. But inside, he was breaking. He had spent his life believing in the law. Now, that same law was tearing him apart in front of his children. At the precinct, Malcolm sat quietly in a holding cell, his hands still cuffed, his mind calm. Officer Bradley leaned against the counter, talking loud enough for everyone to hear. "Guy says he's a judge," he laughed. "Can you believe that? Dressed up, driving a fancy car, and thinks he's royalty." The others chuckled. Kent didn't. He looked at Malcolm, something about his posture, his silence, it didn't add up. Malcolm wasn't angry. He wasn't shouting, demanding, or threatening to call lawyers. He just sat there, his composure unshaken. Hours passed. No verification. No apology. Just waiting. Until the door burst open. Angela Hayes, Malcolm's wife, entered with fury in her eyes. She was elegant, composed, and deeply unimpressed. "I'm here for my husband," she said coldly. Bradley smirked. And he is? Judge Malcolm Hayes, she said, enunciating every word. The room froze. Bradley blinked. Judge what? You heard me, she said. And I suggest you release him immediately before this becomes something your chief will have to answer for. Bradley stammered. We're verifying that. Do that, Angela said sharply. But remember this moment when you explained to your superiors why you handcuffed a sitting judge in front of his children. She turned her gaze to Malcolm through the holding cell window. Their eyes met. No words were needed. She saw his calm, and it steadied her rage. Malcolm said softly, "It's fine, Angie. Let them do their job. The truth has a way of finding its way to daylight." Within 30 minutes, that truth arrived. The courthouse confirmed it. Yes, he was Judge Hayes. Yes, he presided over civil rights hearings. And yes, he was scheduled to oversee an internal review case involving the Eastbrook Police Department next week. The same precinct. The same officers. Bradley's face went pale. He approached the cell. Judge Hayes, I had no idea. I'm so sorry, sir. It was a misunderstanding. Malcolm looked up slowly. No, officer. You knew exactly what you were doing. You just didn't know who you were doing it to. The words hung in the air like a verdict. The following Monday, the courthouse buzzed with whispers. Reporters filled the benches. The air was heavy with irony. 2 officers stood nervously in their uniforms. Bradley's face looked drained of its former arrogance. Kent stood beside him, eyes downcast. Then silence fell. The courtroom doors opened. Judge Malcolm Hayes entered, his robe flowing, expression calm, the same calm he carried when they humiliated him in the street. He took his seat at the bench, looked out over the courtroom, and began, "Good morning. We are here today to address allegations of misconduct and unlawful arrest." His voice carried power, not the kind that shouted, but the kind that didn't need to. Bradley and Kent's attorney stammered through excuses about mistaken identity, procedural error, and miscommunication. Malcolm listened, patient. When they finished, he folded his hands. "Officers," he began, "I want you to understand something. The badge you wear is supposed to represent protection, not prejudice. The power you hold is borrowed, not given." Bradley shifted in his seat, eyes on the floor. Malcolm continued, "On that day, you didn't see a father. You didn't see a man taking his kids to practice. You saw a color and a stereotype, and you acted on it." He paused. The room was still. "I won't let anger decide this ruling," he said, his tone steady. "Because justice doesn't wear a color. But make no mistake, what happened was wrong. And it will not be ignored." The verdict was firm. Bradley was suspended and referred for disciplinary review. Kent, who had shown hesitation, was reassigned to a community program working with underprivileged youth under Judge Hayes' supervision. It wasn't revenge. It was reform. A week later, Bradley requested to meet privately with the judge. Malcolm agreed. In his office, Bradley stood awkwardly, hat in hand. "Sir, I just wanted to apologize. I've been thinking about it nonstop. About what I did. About how my own son saw that video online. He asked me why I treated you like that." Malcolm looked at him quietly. "And what did you tell him?" Bradley swallowed hard. "I told him I was wrong." Malcolm nodded slowly. "That's a start." He leaned back in his chair. "Officer Bradley, I don't hate you. But I hope you understand now, prejudice doesn't always wear a hood. Sometimes it wears a badge." Bradley lowered his head. "Yes, sir," Malcolm said softly. "Then make sure the next man you pull over doesn't have to teach you that same lesson." That weekend, Malcolm stood outside the courthouse with his children. The world had moved on. The headlines had faded. But his children hadn't forgotten. "Dad," Aiden asked, "did they say sorry?" Malcolm smiled faintly. "Not with words, son. But sometimes change speaks louder than an apology." Maya held his hand tightly. "You weren't scared?" He looked down at her. "Of course I was. But courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right even when you're afraid." They walked toward their car, the same car he'd been pulled from days ago. This time, there were no flashing lights behind him, only sunlight ahead. Sometimes, justice doesn't wear a badge. Sometimes, power doesn't wear a suit. And sometimes, the man you humiliate on the street is the one who'll remind you what justice truly means. Because real justice isn't about revenge, it's about revelation. That day, on a quiet suburban street, a father didn't just endure injustice, he transformed it. He turned humiliation into history. He turned silence into strength. And through him, a generation of children learned that respect is not demanded by authority, it is earned by humanity. Subscribe to Hidden Tales Stories for more stories.